U.S. stocks suffering major losses today. I'm Kana Whitworth here in Los Angeles, and that is our big story. President Trump's sweeping tariffs sending shockwaves across Wall Street, slamming stock markets. What the president's plan means for the U.S. economy and how it impacts global markets and key trade partners. Also in our spotlight, a possible plan to save TikTok, what the president is reportedly considering as a major company enters the bidding war to buy that platform. All right, we begin here with our big story. President Trump's trade tariffs causing a ripple effect, and it's felt around the globe right now. But on Wall Street, the closing bell marking the end of a brutal day on the stock market. Look at that. Major indexes just plummeting today as investors are stoking fears here of perhaps a Trump-induced recession. Well, this is just a day after the president announced these sweeping new tariffs against U.S. trade partners. And just a short time ago, the president reacted to the market while standing firm on his policies.
Well, I mean, it's to be expected where this is a patient that was very sick. We really inherited a terrible economy. And so it was a sick patient. It went through an operation on Liberation Day. And it's going to be a booming country.
Well, in the meantime, though, on Capitol Hill, some U.S. senators are firing back against the White House, filing a bipartisan bill that would require the president to seek congressional approval for all tariffs. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer came out blasting Trump's plan, promising to fight the tariffs tooth and nail.
Yesterday, Donald Trump made one of the dumbest decisions he has ever made as president, and that's saying something. Donald Trump has single-handedly created a financial forest fire.
Financial forest fire. All right, ABC News Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl joins me for more on this. So for some other fiery language for you, I just want to share with you from the AP, saying it's the worst day for the S&P 500 since it crashed during the pandemic in 2020. And Alexis Christoforous pointing out, essentially in a single day, we lost $3 trillion in value. What is the general reaction right now in Washington?
And by the way, Ken, last time I checked stock market futures, it's early, are already pointing to more losses tomorrow. You heard from the president; he simply does not seem concerned about what the stock market did today. I've heard similarly from White House officials and from people close to the president. Expected that there would be a downturn, at least a temporary downturn in reaction to these tariffs, but they think it will be temporary, and they'd say that the fundamental direction is the direction that Trump has telegraphed that he would go for a long time. You know, Kana, if you think about it, Donald Trump has had this position on trade, a position that the United States gets ripped off by our trading partners and that we should retaliate. That has been central to what he has said long before he was a political candidate. In fact, it is more central to his basic message than even the immigration issue. I don't hear a lot of panic at the White House right now, even as steep as this downturn was today on Wall Street.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I'm also curious. We heard yesterday the president say they calculated the combined rate of these reciprocal tariffs. He also called them kind reciprocal tariffs and sort of threw out the 50% number. But do we have any idea how they really got to these actual numbers?
There's a worksheet that the U.S. Trade Representative put out to explain that, and it is one of the most incomprehensible documents that I have ever seen issued by the federal government. But essentially what they tried to do here is not simply country X charges us 15%, therefore we're going to do 7.5% because we're going to do half. It's not just the tariffs that the other countries charge, it's a cumulative effect. It takes into account in some way the trade deficit we have with that country. It takes into account non-economic barriers for U.S. companies to operate or to sell their goods in those countries. But it's very hard to understand because you have countries that have been tariffed quite steeply that the United States actually has a trade surplus with. So it's a mystery, and it's something I've asked the White House about as you can imagine, and they've acknowledged there may be some mistakes, privately acknowledged there may be some mistakes in the numbers as presented yesterday that they would be refining before these go into effect. They go into effect in 6 days on April 9th.
John, we also heard that the president essentially saying tax cuts are the next step of this economic agenda. We've got the House and Senate with these two separate plans. We heard the president say yesterday he fully endorsed the Senate plan. Are they going to be able to come together on something?
It's a tight margin that Republicans are working with on Capitol Hill. They're going through a process called reconciliation, which if they can get through, it will only require 51 votes in the Senate. So there is a path to getting these tax cuts enacted. Also, of course, the Senate has to be on the same page eventually with the House. The House has a slightly larger margin thanks to the special elections that were held yesterday in Florida. But this is going to be tight, like everything that has gone through under Mike Johnson's speakership. But so far, it has to be said, he has a pretty solid track record of getting things passed.
He certainly does, and he spoke directly to his cabinet and to some House members, Speaker Johnson specifically yesterday out there in the Rose Garden. All right, Jonathan Karl, always such a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right, I want to bring our big story to our panel now. Joining us today is ABC News political contributor and former Republican congressman for New York, John Katko, Democratic strategist and co-founder at Lift Our Voices, Julie Roginski, ABC News contributor and Democratic strategist Cristina Cinsun Ramirez, and everyone, former Republican congressman for New York, Anthony D'Esposito, who has also been tapped by President Trump to be perhaps the next Inspector General of the Labor Department. So passing that along to everyone, congratulations. But I'm going to take it straight to Julie. No offense, okay, on your new job. Julie, I do want to start here with you. We knew Schumer was going to come out with tough words, right? But he's not holding back. He feels like this tariff plan is one of the dumbest decisions that Trump has ever made. But I think the follow-up question there is that if he feels like that, what are Democrats going to do about it?
Well, Chuck Schumer knows full well there's not much Democrats can do about it other than do what Cory Booker did the other day to bring attention to this. But the reality is, look, Democrats can talk about it. Democrats can bring attention to it. Democrats don't have to do much because people are going to start to feel this in their own wallets very, very quickly. And the one thing Donald Trump is very good at is gaslighting his own supporters. Can't gaslight the markets, and you can't gaslight people when they're paying more, over $2,000 more for a new iPhone. You can't gaslight people more when you end up paying more for groceries. You can't gaslight people more when you start paying more for toys around Christmas. You can't gaslight people more when their 401ks are evaporating before their very eyes. That's just math. And that's what's going to happen here. And so I'm glad that Donald Trump is okay. He's got his little crypto business that's going to obviously keep him very wealthy for the rest of his life. But for regular Americans, including a lot of MAGA supporters, this is a slap in the face. So I'm not sure that Chuck Schumer really needs to do much other than sit back and watch the Republican Party implode itself into oblivion with their own supporters and other voters.
Well, Anthony, I mean, what is your response to that? And were you surprised yesterday that the president didn't take a moment in that speech to reach out to these everyday Americans, to reach out to his supporters that he knows might be paying more for everyday goods?
Well, I think that's the key. And to Julie's point, she's right in the fact that you can't argue with the prices of goods. You can't argue with things costing more. Those are real. You can't argue with the markets. People see the numbers and the volatility each and every day. But I think what the president needs to do is he told the American people during the campaign that this is exactly what his plan was. And his plan is to have these reciprocal tariffs so that our economy stabilizes in the future. And he has made it very clear that he wants to make this country grow again, and that there's going to be short-term hurt for long-term gain. But I think what's key right now is having those conversations, is actually speaking directly to the American people and letting them know probably each and every day exactly what the plan is, because there is just too much information from every side of the political spectrum. And I think that President Trump needs to own this narrative. He needs to make it very clear to the American people, not just his supporters, but the American people as a whole. This is the plan. This is why I'm doing this. This is what I intend our future to be.
Christina, I want to play off of what he just said there a little bit with you. You work so closely with young Democratic voters. That message here of can you accept this short-term pain for the long-term gain, especially for young people, maybe even that they're just of voting age. Do they see that plan? Does that resonate with them that this might be better for your future? Maybe it's better for your children's future, or is that communication not happening there?
Look, I wish Anthony were right. I think tariffs can be a good thing, but you actually do have to have a plan. It's clear their own math doesn't even add up. They don't know why they made some percentages for certain countries and on what goods and when is the end point for us. This is why Donald Trump has united economists of all political persuasions, from the Wall Street Journal calling it the dumbest trade war ever if he pursued it, to Robert Reich, former head of the Department of Labor under Democrats. Young people, working class Americans are going to be the hardest hit. And I wish Anthony were right that short-term pain for long-term gain to create good wages and good jobs in this country. But that is not what is happening, because when you do tariffs, you have to have a plan to invest in industries in this country that will grow wages, protect unions. There is no plan here. We are all in a wild ride with a drunk driver, and it's Donald Trump. And I just hope we all make it out alive.
All right, Christina is coming out firing today. But John, I do want to ask you about the potential for negotiation. Do you think there is any? Because it seemed like that was the plan, that this is going to be used for leverage. There will be some negotiations. But now the things that are coming out of the White House, Carolyn Leavitt saying this isn't a negotiation, this is a national emergency. Howard Lutnick telling CNN that he doesn't think there's any chance Trump will back off on his tariffs. Do you feel like that's a mistake here to not keep that window open, especially because some of them have a few days before they go into effect?
Well, sure, it's a mistake, but I think the bigger problem for him is he's boxed himself into a corner here, because he came out with these programs, he came out with all these tariffs, and if he goes back on those tariffs, he's going to look weak. If he goes back on some, it's going to give uncertainty to the market, and anybody who knows the markets knows uncertainty is even worse than bad news. And there's a lot of uncertainty here, and there's a lot. If he stays with the tariffs that they are now, our economy is in big trouble, and the world economy is in big trouble. If he backs off from them, he's in trouble politically to some extent. And there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. How much does he back off? Who does he back off with? So I think he's in a real kind of box himself in, and it's a real problem for him and the country going forward.
Oh, and it sounds like perhaps right now it might be a problem for some Republicans in some tight swing districts come the midterms as well.
Oh, yes.
All right, John, Julie, Christina, and Anthony, our thanks to you.